I've been way more nervous about this than I thought I would be, so I'm just gonna dive in. This will be the cliff notes of my backstory or my journey with binge eating, disordered eating, all of that very fun stuff. I have a lot to share on this topic, but I've really felt like context is important because it's a very sensitive thing and everyone has a different experience. That said, of course, there are commonalities. So for starters, in 2015, I graduated from college. I had a rough time with that transition, going from constantly being busy on campus with class and homework and also working like several different jobs throughout college and just always being on the go, having things to do, and having this very specific goal, that being graduating and getting a job. After I graduated, I did get a job. And I moved to a different part of New Jersey, about an hour away from where I had been. And I didn't really have a social group. I had three roommates, but I didn't know them very well. They obviously already had their own friends, so it was a little isolating. I didn't really feel like there was a lot to my life outside of work, so it was just a very weird transition to go from being so busy and having a campus life and all this fun stuff to then basically just wake up, go to the gym, go to work, come home, and yeah. On top of that, Montclair is where I lived, and Montclair is a really cool city in New Jersey. They've got a lot of great food, a lot of cool shops, bakeries, all this stuff. So a lot of good food, which I wasn't used to having because my college was in a very small part of New Jersey, and before that, where I grew up, was a very, very small town. So during this phase, I definitely went through a little bit of depression without fully realizing it, and I did lean on food a lot to cope with that. I definitely think that was one of the things that kind of set the seed for binge eating, but really it came down to, by 2016, I would say spring of 2016, I had put on a decent amount of weight and I decided that I wanted to diet. And throughout my college time, I had always been very active. I was a horseback rider and I did start going to the gym in college. So, I would put on some weight here and there, but I didn't really have to diet necessarily. And so I just never really tried. But what I kind of experienced was as soon as I started losing some weight, it quickly felt like it turned into kind of an obsession because it was really exciting to be losing weight and I was already working out a lot, and so that kind of became my whole life outside of work, was just like dieting and working out. And then I fell into bodybuilding and got really interested in that, and I decided to compete. So by this time it was the summer of 2016 and I signed up for a bodybuilding competition for the bikini division. The show was in November and I had, a few months left to prep. And that was extremely difficult, but it was also very exhilarating because you are putting your body and your mind to the ultimate test, being so disciplined, both physically and mentally with your willpower, that it was very rewarding for that reason, but also, of course, it's very hard on you physically and mentally. And I definitely, really saw kind of the binging starting to come up towards the last month or two of prep. And then immediately after the show, I rebounded extremely hard. There were also a lot of other things going in my life that were very, very difficult. So overall, it was a rough time for me. I put on about 30 pounds within a couple months. Well, within probably a month after the show, it was very clear that I had developed a serious issue with food, but I definitely was still in denial and just wanted to jump into prepping for another show. And so I kind of began this yo-yo process of trying to restrict really hard again, and then also instead being like, okay, maybe I'll just bulk right now and just focus on gaining muscle. But still, even during those phases, I was trying not to eat like crazy. I was still counting macros and just doing all this obsessive stuff. Not that it's a bad thing for people that can handle it and people that do it in a healthy way. For me though, it was pretty bad, and I won't go into a lot of details about the specific experiences in this video. I can definitely get into them in another, but this is just meant to kind of give the backstory. So This was by, early 2017. I was early as in the winter, like it just had turned 2017. And by the following summer, I was still really, really struggling. And then that's when I chose to move to Florida. So lots of change happening. And I got down to Florida. I knew a couple people, and so like my job changed. Obviously where I lived changed, but then that changed several times because I had to find an apartment. Before that, I had an Airbnb. And it was just a whole bunch of things. And then fast forward to then by 2018, early 2018, I met someone who I thought was potentially boyfriend material, and that quickly developed into a very toxic relationship that lasted for 2 years too long. And the eating disorder and that really did kind of feed off each other. I would go through phases of starving myself for like days at a time, to then going on really difficult binges. And yeah, that's kind of, in a very, very condensed version, what my experience was. So yeah, I would say it started developing in 2015, definitely by 2016, and then it was late 2019 that I started to come out of it. And definitely I would say the darkest times were the last kind of final year of going through all that. So my goal in talking about this is really to share my own personal experience, and the possibility that it might resonate with someone, if it might give someone different thoughts on how they might be able to get help, or decisions they might be able to make that feel right for them to take a step towards feeling better. However, that said, of course, I am not an expert in this area in any type of way, but I also don't want to underestimate that, because I know that can be very powerful for some people that are in a similar situation. So yeah, I am happy to answer any questions that anyone might feel inclined to ask. But that said, of course, my responses will be centered around my own experience. And yeah, I really hope that I can help in some way. And yeah.